Says I'm live. Think I'm live. I think Rumble's working. We're live. Yes, it's true. Okay. How's it going? Happy Tuesday to you. It is Tuesday, the 18th of August. How's it going? How's everybody doing? I hope well. So yesterday I talked to a friend who watched my spiel and was like, "Hey, that's all well and good, everything you said, but there's one issue." And I'm like, "What? What's the problem?" And they were like, "You don't know a damn thing about AI." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point." But all is not lost. If anything else, you can see if you want to watch yesterday's episode, you might get some sort of idea as to what ignoramus thinks about what's going on with AI at the moment. I am going to study up and get back on that subject because I think it is the subject that everyone's going to be talking about for probably the next at least 5 years. And it's a subject that we should be talking about. Tucker Carlson, again, made some really good points, and he undoubtedly knows more than I do. And he talks about it as though it's a giant existential threat. For whatever reason, I don't see it that way, but then again, maybe I'm just not educated enough, which is, I mean, that's true. I'm definitely not. But anyway, so anything that I said yesterday, if you were paying attention, take it with a grain of salt. The fact still remains, though, that the powers that be cannot be surprised when we're questioning things and we're instantly not happy that everything's being planned out for us. And in America, we at least tell ourselves that we're in control of our own destinies. And now that universities and high schools and middle schools teach that things like equity and equality, not equality, they actually, schools are teaching people that being nice, especially to underprivileged, is the utmost, it's the virtue, that it is even a virtue. Equality under any cost, at any cost, is a virtue. And so then you have these really powerful people that are very deeply connected to the government saying, "Hey, everything's about to change for you. 75% of jobs, whatever the number is, whatever the percentage is, are going to be wiped out. But don't worry, it's going to be great." They can't be surprised when people are worked up about it. And it's fascinating that this all came about around the same time that the discussion we should be having is about COVID. That's what we should be talking about at the moment, is COVID. There's no doubt. The past 6 years should be a discussion on individual rights and medicine and government overreach and, again, that iron triangle: lobbyists, corporations, Congress. And it's not. Now we're talking about AI. And we have to talk about AI, but we also need to talk about these other things. And that's what I want this show that I call Data Points to be about, is let's talk about data, even though I'm ill prepared, kind of busy. At the same time, that's no excuse. But as I learn, this is only my second time doing this. I've done some other things where I've talked in front of a camera and tried to get used to this idea, but actually trying to do this every single day, turn my hobby into something that maybe someday I can make money doing. This is new for me. So I'm learning as we go. I might have severe ADD. Maybe I was on Ritalin from the late 80s on to almost the year 2000. That's a while to be on Ritalin. Um, and 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 after Ritalin, I turned to marijuana to slow my brain down, and then and now I'm raw dogging. And so when I say bear with me, I mean it, because I'm trying to bear with myself at the moment, and that's fun. That's fun. Anyway, let's get down to business. So I'm going to try to pivot away from AI, but I do, again, when all of a sudden they go to the Pope, because think about the threats, think about the things that they're putting in front of your face. In your brain, you've got your amygdala right there in the front. If you've ever seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, everybody remembers the lobotomy scene at the end. He's got the stitches because they went and sliced his, I think he sliced his amygdala. So his fight or flight was gone. He was a zombie. And to a large degree, it kind of feels like maybe America has been zombified. Like we've all gotten a lobotomy by watching some of the crazy media that we're fed. And this is where the term slop comes from. And I know that for some people there's a racial connotation. I don't see it that way. I see slop as slop. And I think to diminish, and I know the initial term was goy slop, I get it. But I don't want to call it that. I will call it slop. And I think that to diminish it or say, well, that's just some racial, you're just being racist or ethnocentric or whatever, you can't just brush that stuff aside. There's a reason people are calling it slop. There's a reason really intelligent people take the term and run with it. Because when we see our media for the past 30, 40 years, especially, actually since TV, have you ever watched like an old game show? You ever watch an old game show? They've been dumbing us down. I don't know who they are. The elite have been either, you can look at it as dumbing down or feeding the least common denominator for a while. And there's a part of you that you're like, oh, that's kind of sweet that people used to, that this kind of humor, this innocent humor used to resonate with people. At the same time, you read authors and how they viewed television, and you can see why they were scared of it. They warned us about TV the same way that people warned us about the internet, and the same way that we're being warned about AI. So I guess maybe for me to say that we shouldn't worry about AI is kind of stupid, because they were right about the internet. They were right about TV. And it seems as though AI is going to be the final frontier. Not the final frontier, but that AI is what everything else will be built on to come from here on. And that's interesting. It's like, and maybe this is what these guys are trying to warn us about, is they've stumbled upon, they've created something that's so powerful that maybe they don't even trust themselves with it. And I made the joke about they need to bring Mythos in front of the House of Representatives and just ask it some questions. Let people see what it's saying. And I'm kind of serious. I still think that's why not? But maybe there's truths that in order for a free society to keep functioning properly, we don't need to look at or think about. If you're a religious person, you understand that this is Satan's realm, right? And so maybe our higher selves need to keep focusing on things that maybe if we focus on the right things, that becomes our reality. And maybe AI has no way of focusing on those higher truths. Because there's all kinds of, we're searching for truth, right? But at one point, does take all the lies out, take all the lies out of the equation, and at what point do you have to pick and choose which truths to focus on, to think about, to talk about? I don't know. I really enjoy evolutionary psychology. I think humans do a lot of things that don't make sense. I enjoy reading about things like hormones, why people do the things they do. I think it's really interesting that people mocked Alex Jones for so long, talking about the atrazine. And now everybody, the studies, you start looking at actual science and you go, oh. And you start factoring in what we talked about yesterday, that since the 80s, testosterone's down, 22%? Across the board, every age group. You go, oh. If you're following me on X, I just took video of planes that are, or at least one plane that is spraying something in the air. It's not a contrail. And when I first walked outside, that's when I thought, oh, I gotta keep an eye out, because we don't have a cloud in the sky at the moment here in northern Arizona, but we've got these wispy, they're not cirrus clouds. They're close to cirrus clouds, but they're not. And you can tell they're not. It's something sprayed. There are moments where after they spray some of this stuff, you can see kind of a rainbow oil slick shimmer in the clouds. And that's a phenomenon that when it happens naturally it is extremely rare. But here in northern Arizona, we'll get it to where you can see it once a week. So when we start asking these very serious questions about hormones, about testosterone, about our endocrine systems in general, and when we start looking at cancer rates that are through the roof, shouldn't we also start asking, what are they spraying? What are they spraying above us that trickles down? What is that? There's been scientists that have sent up weather balloons, and they say that it's aluminum, barium, and strontium. I think that's how you say it. Aluminum gets sucked into the brain, gets trapped in the brain, causes Alzheimer's. Barium gets in your blood, causes disease, cancers. Strontium is absorbed by the bones, causes leukemia. But you bring this up to people and they kind of look at you like you're nuts. But I used to have a liberal friend, and he's still my friend. I think if I ran into him, we'd still be friends, but I had to get off Facebook. I used to troll him. He used to troll me, back and forth. But we're still friends. That was cool. That's cool. That's where I like the idea of public school. I like the idea of universities, public universities, where everybody can go and you mingle with people that view the world completely different than you because they've had completely different experiences. And that's how you learn, that's how you grow. And it's so important. That social aspect of schooling is far more important than what they're teaching people. You let people be free, they'll learn, as long as you've still got things like books around. And you hope that we will still have things like books around after AI starts telling us everything, right? That we will still have the guts to go learn for ourselves from other people that have experienced life. You know, throw out any ideas of AI turning on us or deciding that we are ants that need to be exterminated. Locusts. Watch The Matrix sometime, you know. The AI is just tired of our smell. It's like going into the monkey cages at the zoo. You know. Forget that part. Let's say that AI stays completely subservient to us and really just gives us information, is always kind, and is programmed, stays within its programming to be of service to mankind. You got to hope that there's still going to be a stigma around people that rely on it for everything. And if there's not a stigma, you have to create a stigma. And this is something that the liberals, who are not who they say they are, the term liberal should not be applied to them. Even the term progressive honestly shouldn't be applied to them. They should be called tyrants. Those that believe in tyranny, subjugation. They are people who time and again prove to all of us, sorry, I'm in front of my phone, I'm learning. People that time and again prove to all of us that they think they know better and they're willing to do whatever it takes to implement their viewpoint. They're like children. And so maybe I shouldn't be so hard on people like Amanday. Well, Amanday's spitting straight out communist manifesto type stuff. Well, we're just going to tax the really wealthy. I mean, that's straight out of the progressive movement from the turn of the last century. I've got some notes here. Again, progressives are like children. And most of them mean well. I don't even like to be mean to them. I feel bad for them. I don't even think that it's a stupidity issue. I used to think, well, the progressives, leftists, they're a little dumb. I don't even think that's it. I think they're angry and envious. I think this is like a biblical fight that we're in. And I could be wrong. I'm often wrong. But I think I'm right about this. So progressives show up and they've studied Immanuel Kant, right? They go and they don't look to the British philosophers like the founding fathers did. They look to German philosophy. And thank you to Hillsdale College. Anybody that wants to be somebody, if you want to be a cool guy, go to hillsdale.edu or hillsdalecollege.edu. I'll have to look at it. Take their courses on the Constitution. And right now I'm trying I want my kids to go through the course on the Odyssey. They have a new one on the Odyssey that's outstanding. But the one on Constitution is really good. And I just started the Federalist Papers one, and I'm going to try to use that with my talks on here. But I took notes. Amazing class. Hillsdale.edu, I do believe is what it is, and the classes are free. Just give them your email. It's one of the only newsletter things that I actually appreciate getting, because it's no fluff. It's no, oh, the Democrats are doing this. No, these guys go deep. They're serious. They're real, and so I cannot emphasize enough. If you want to be a cool guy, go to hillsdale.edu, or I believe that's it. Let me look it up right now, because I don't want to say it wrong, because it really is that cool and that important. Let me see. Hillsdale College. Let's do it. You got it. Hillsdale.edu. That's correct. And sign up for their online courses. They're free. They're brilliant. And you'll really get a better understanding of the Constitution and what the Founding Fathers, the classes they have, you won't believe them. You really, how we can be so blessed to live in a country where we can learn why we have everything we have. I mean, that's a blessing. It's something just to be excited about in and of itself. And for these, whoever started Hillsdale up in Michigan, to have taken it so seriously and done it the right way, God bless them, because there's not many universities that are pushing the kind of information out there that they are in such a responsible manner. They really aren't. So, progressives, they study a bunch. Some of them go to Germany, and it's a lot of these aristocratic families. The South was very aristocratic, and people don't realize that. We talk about slavery, and we say, oh, the South was so hard on people of color, on African Americans. We don't realize how hard they were on poor white people as well. It was not exactly a caste system, but not far off. And they truly believed that there were just better people that deserved to have what they have because of who they were. And nobody talks about that. There was actual slaves being treated better than some of the poor whites in the South. It's uncomfortable to say, it's not fun to say, but it's kind of, there's some truth there, and it's the reality of the situation. As well as they tried to maintain their power, because when the founders created the Constitution, they knew good and well, you can go back to their writings, they knew good and well that this would help end slavery. They didn't end slavery. The British ended slavery. They were the first. And of course they were. It was their philosophy that brought about the United States Constitution. But the South, they were making good money with the slave trade. And they didn't want to lose that power. They didn't want to lose that aristocracy. They knew that their entire system was going to have to be turned upside down in order for that to happen. And so they were scared. They acted out of fear, to the degree that they would step over the Constitution in a lot of ways that sound very, very familiar to us right now. Postmaster generals were told that they had to, if they thought that someone was an abolitionist, they would read their mail. They were opening mail. They were stepping on people's privacy. Well, gosh, does that not sound familiar? Does that not sound real familiar? As well, we know that there was a certain group of people deeply involved in the slave trade. I'll go into that someday, not today. And we live in a system right now where if you say the wrong thing in Gmail, you send an email in Gmail out where you use the wrong words. Don't think for a moment that your Gmail, that email is not going to be sent to somebody. And it may not be here in America. And there might be other nation states who have made deals, backroom deals, that we have nothing, we're not privy to see to it that people who say certain things within their own email, within their Gmail, people keep an eye on them. That's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. In a republic, we're looking more and more like we want to be a direct democracy, and I don't know why. I have some theories. Socialists would love nothing more than for us to be a direct democracy in every aspect. The 17th Amendment is the abomination in our Constitution, and it has to be gutted if we're going to get back to a true representative republic, in my personal opinion. But it's dangerous. German philosophers believe that there are absolute truths. That you can look around and intent, someone's intent doesn't mean much. What's actually happening? What is physical reality? That's all that mattered to them. Or at least to Immanuel Kant, who was kind of the philosopher that they turned to. As opposed to I mean, it is a little bit more of a Hobbesian look at things, but as opposed to Hobbes, as opposed to Adam Smith, these people that believed in a higher good that they acknowledged maybe couldn't ever be completely achieved, but that you didn't debase yourself by ignoring them. And maybe that's also what's going on with AI. Like I said earlier, what if we are slaves? What if we're chattel? And I don't want to get into the birth certificate, maritime, sovereign citizen stuff. I don't understand it well enough. Again, I'm not that bright. But what if, just at face value, living in a country that says the more successful you are, the higher percentage of if you make a lot more money and you're on the same tax bracket across the board, say that we got Steve Forbes's flat tax 30 years ago that he had wanted, you're still going to be paying more. But we live in a country now where you add up all the taxes, the more that you make, the more they're going to take out of. That doesn't make sense. It is completely counterintuitive. There were two things when I found out they existed. My brain I didn't understand them. I was like 10, 12 years old when these things were explained to me. One was income tax. Don't get it. Why would you punish people for trying to be productive? It makes no sense. Kills jobs, kills human spirit. And the other was abortion. Why in the world would you do that? You killed a human life. Talk about killing human spirit. Now we live in a world where if you're born, it's like, oh, you made it. Since 1973, over 64 million people have been genocided. 64 million people have been genocided, and now we're told, oh, we have to take in all these immigrants that don't believe anything the Constitution says. And it's one thing if you assimilate them correctly to where you know for a fact they do believe what it says because you want your nation to stay a nation. You want to acknowledge that a nation state needs to have a sense of community and a sense of civil society. It's another thing if you're just like, well, we just need numbers. We need people. We don't have enough. Well, we've also killed 64 million of them. Plus, the number's got to be higher. And then what does that do to morale? What does that do to morale, to the morale of a nation? There's things that, again, if you explain it to a child and they don't get it, like I didn't get it, then doesn't that mean that if the adults are all believing it, that maybe they're lying to themselves? Aren't we at our best when we're like 10 years old? Hormones haven't kicked in. We're just living life. You're living life to the best of your ability. You're trying to have fun. Well, that's not what life is about. Well, who says? Maybe life is about having fun a little bit. Well, it's about work. Work feels good. Most men agree that work, if they're working toward building something, that brings about joy. If it didn't, we wouldn't be doing it. If everything we did was just purely out of duty, a sense that we were supposed to, how long can that last? Seriously, how long does that last? I don't know. So, I study Immanuel Kant. A lot of these guys come out of, I will get back to you on the school. It's that school is known for the amazing medicine in the South, and I cannot think of it off the top of my head. I'll get back to it, but a lot of them come out of this prestigious university. Let me look it up. What university? It's two names. This is why I say I'm just not the brightest, and I'm learning as I go. I need to take better notes. And in fact, it's probably in my notes, but I don't want to shuffle through. Johns Hopkins. So Johns Hopkins is studying or is teaching German philosophy and these ideas that there are these absolute truths. And if you believe that, if you believe that your belief of what is right and wrong and what is true and false is cemented, then all of these, anything anybody brings to you're willing to say, let's find a way to shut them up. They don't understand. And this is why they stole the term liberal. The idea of being liberal was, I think this is how life goes. I'm going to give my 2 cents in this open society where I can say whatever I want. And I will respect that other people are going to have completely different opinions, and we can get out in the public square, we can talk about it. Progressives are like, "Nah, I know what's up." They don't, but let's play the game. So again, it's like dealing with a child. It's like talking to a little kid, and the little kid's like, "Hey, I look around, we've got a lot of nice things. Society, and especially after the 1880s, they called, after the Jackson era, we were put on the gold standard and things blew up. America was at its peak. We had never seen such abundance before. That was peak America, late 1800s. And this is human nature. This is what happens. You get on the right track, you get a liberal society, truly liberal, classical liberal, and the next thing you know, people show up and go, "Okay, now let's start handing things out." And I think for most liberals, most leftists, they start out as seeing themselves as caring. It's the head and the heart, they're going by the heart now. And it's very indicative of human nature because they were looking around 1900, and they were going, "Man, look at all this abundance. But I still see poor people. Poor people are still out there. They exist." I look to my Bible, and it says that we're supposed to take care of one another. We're supposed to share. But that darn Constitution, that Constitution that says that people, each and every man is the king of his own household. But he's doing really well, and there's people, even though this age of abundance has lifted all the boats, everybody's doing better than they were. It's kind of like during the Industrial Revolution, and I think this is what the AI guys are scared of. During the Industrial Revolution, suddenly we had child labor, and things weren't as beautiful as they were before. We were building machines and telling ourselves that we were moving forward, which we were. But but Charles Dickens would write about the child labor and just the trauma, how terrible it was. But he never mentioned the fact that these children would have probably not survived, and they would have gone hungry had it not been for the Industrial Revolution. They leave that part out. It's the same thing where you buy product from another country, a poor country, and you say, well, this is sweatshop. This is out of a sweatshop. Without any true understanding or acknowledgement of how those people were living before the sweatshops. And I'm not saying sweatshops are good. I'm not saying that any of that is good or optimal on any level. But if America had to go through some growing pains in order to reach a level where we are truly upset if we think that children somewhere are going hungry, our ancestors had to go through some things. And this is also part of the reason that we truly get upset at the idea that people are moving in whose ancestors didn't go through that. And then when you have them come here and complain about America and consider anyone that doesn't want a flood of immigrants in their nation to be some kind of hicks or hillbillies, yeah, it creates resentment. And maybe that's the point, but I won't go into that. Anyway, I digress, and then I digress from my digressions, and let's get back to it. So we know that the Declaration of Independence was about natural rights. That was so important for the Founding Fathers to focus on natural rights, rights handed to individuals from God, because from everything else that was born out of the United States, it was born out of those natural rights. I have been somewhat obsessed with the Bill of Rights since I was about 10, 12 years old. I actually think that we might need a new digital Bill of Rights. In fact, I know we do. Because at the moment, we are much more like the South, the pre-Civil War South, than anyone wants to acknowledge. We are being spied on. Privacy does not exist. Now, if you're in a contract with a company, you get a Blink camera, and you've said, let's say you read the entire contract with Blink, with Amazon, and you're like, yes, I agree with this, What? It's one thing if Amazon was not directly connected to the federal government, but we live in a system where all of these giant corporations are directly connected to the federal government. All of your data is for sale, and you're getting hosed. And we all know we're getting hosed, but we like it. We like these things. But at what point do we look around and go, oh man, I own nothing, but I'm getting my dopamine hits, so I'm happy. So progressives show up and they're like, yeah, we're going to change what it means. So again, it's like talking to a kid. Well, there's poor people. We have a lot of money all around us. Let's take money from the rich people and give it to the poor people. And you say, no, son, that's not really how it works. If we tried to do that, that would take a brand new system of government, and you could have civil war. People could die. Oh, okay. Well, then let's just change the government and redefine things. Now, maybe a 10-year-old isn't going to say, let's redefine things, but we've got some very juvenile ideas of how to bring about change and make sure that people don't rise up and fight back. And given enough time, it works. It has worked. So they believe in something called circumstantial consistency. I can't spell. And they believe that there's been an evolution of governments throughout history. So humans are always getting better, right? It's not that we broke free and now suddenly humans are able to kind of do what we naturally do, which is get along and create useful goods. It's that, well, we're enlightened now and we've created a better government. Why stop here? Why stop at the Bill of Rights? Let's tack on a bunch more amendments. Let's just keep it going. And a lot of governments actually work this way. The Texas Constitution is huge. Texas Constitution is huge. Anytime that they want to change a law, they have to amend the entire Constitution. Does that work for Texas? Sure. Texas is a state. And that's the way they want it. That's the way they have it, and it seems to work. That's fine. Texas is not a nation state that has to worry about other nation states trying to attack or usurp it. Although right now they're getting a little antsy about some things. And so progressives, they start to believe that the original problems of mankind are antiquated, and our needs can now be met because we have reached this point of enlightenment where we can create a government that should be able to meet the needs of everyone. And that's good. In their minds, that is the greater good, is the end result. Again, it's very Kantian. It's what happens in real time that matters, that end result. And this is how we're headed toward $40 trillion in debt. So they believe the Constitution was inadequate, and that's, the criticism of the Constitution became very mainstream after between the 1880s and the 1920s. That's the old stuff. We can do better. We can build back better. And these guys always show up after moments of abundance, when things are really rocking and rolling and people are doing well. And that's when the safeguards, people's sense of oh gosh, you start feeling guilty, right? You're doing really well, and somebody comes along and says, gosh, you're doing really well. You should be sharing a piece of your pie. And you go, oh man, I guess they're right. I don't want people to see me that way. I don't want people to think that about me. Yeah, I'm a liberal. I'm a quote unquote liberal. And we won't get into how that eventually leads to those people wanting to maintain power. It's also, it's a big loophole maker. And this is my fear with Amonday, with the AI, is there's immediately I'm seeing this almost sense of guilt where he's saying, hey, we've got to keep chugging this along. It's got to get bigger, stronger, smarter. But it's also going to be disruptive. And so we're going to need to take money from those of us that are so disruptive and redistribute it. And then for him to use the CCP as the reason to do that, that's insane. But he's doing it. He's saying it, And so there's just a red flag going up in my mind. Something's up. This doesn't make sense. But it's that sense of guilt for being successful that leads so many people down this wrong path. And then for the poor that they tell, oh, well, it's like patting the poor on the head. Oh, you'll be okay. Well, I'll give you some of what I got, and some of what he got, some of what he got, some of what he got. It's a recipe for disaster every time. And in order for that to take place, you have to ignore the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, or tweak it. And that's what happened. So they didn't want limited government. They wanted government to start making some hardcore decisions on winners and losers. And that's the form of government that we've had ever since. I call it socialist. Some people would say socialist is too much. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that there's a strong argument to be made that we live in an oligarchy right now, much like the pre-Civil War South. The founders, they knew these progressives would come along. These were men of philosophy, of history. They understood Rome. They understood Greece. They knew what would happen. One day I'll talk about why Rome fell, or I'll have my son do it. He came up to me and started explaining to me why Rome fell, and I was like, hell yeah, son. You're on the right track. Doing things the right way. You've been watching the right YouTubes or something. No, he's very well read. Raised my kids with Tuttle Twin books, which are amazing. Connor Boyack is a gift from God to humanity, and he has started an entire. I think he's even got like a online school going himself. So if you care about your kids understanding the Constitution, natural rights, God, and what these progressives want to see happen, look into the Tuttle Twin books for your kids. They're really, really good. And they've got comic books now. It's just, the guy is a baller. He really is. Connor Boyack is his name. And I'm the biggest fan in the world. Look up to that guy. So, as I said, progressives, they wanted the redistribution of wealth. And they knew that if they were going to move beyond the Constitution, they would have to dismantle the beliefs the Constitution was founded upon. They were going to have to break us down mentally. All that stuff was antiquated. That's old news. We're in a new era now. Those founding fathers, they weren't bad people. They just they got the ball rolling, and now we're here to really do God's will, and I don't know, look for a little bit of forced equality. They also knew that they would have to attack the Declaration of Independence. Because if God saw us all as equal as is when we're born, well, it's not really true. It's not really true. This is a very Kantian way of looking at things. It's let's talk about the reality of the situation. In reality, some people are born poor, some people are born rich. But you know what? We're better humans now. We have reached enlightenment, and we can fix it. That's what the progressives tried to say. That's what they tried to argue. A lot of progressive intellectual works that even restated the principles of the Declaration of Independence. Again, why do we call them liberals? Because they stole the word and reworked it. The Anti-Federalists wanted to be called the Federalists, but the Federalists took the word first, attached it to themselves, redefined it. Karl Marx argued that's how you'd win the game. Language is a big deal. We understand our world through language, through our understanding of what things are. And we're taught that through language. There was an Atlantic piece that just came out about the end of reading. Do I think that that's true? No, I think it's more fear porn. I think that we get a lot of fear porn regularly. But do I see that there's a worry there? And is it just? Yes. In the age of screens, of blue light hitting us at all times, no matter where we are, I don't even want to tell you what my screen time average was last week. Apple told me. I almost threw up. I like to read, though. It's one of the nice things about X versus other social media. There's not too many videos, even though I'm live right now making a video. But I get my thoughts out better when I talk. I like to write sometimes, but I get my thoughts out better verbally. I learn better with sound. But I still love to read when I have time, if I have time. You control the language, you control the people. So they tried to explain to the American public, and it worked, why the principles of the Declaration of Independence no longer applied. Woodrow Wilson, a fellow political scientist, and easily the worst president we've ever had. That's, you can argue there's times where I would say George W. Bush is right up there, and I'm a Republican. But Woodrow Wilson fundamentally changed the nature of our government. What we're living in right now is not the United States of America that the Founding Fathers intended on any level whatsoever. An acknowledgement of that is important. If our starting point right now of how do we make ourselves better, if we don't start that conversation with how do we go back to when we were our best, we're only just going to keep digging ourselves a big hole. Woodrow Wilson said, if you want to understand the real Declaration of Independence, do not repeat the preface. What? That's what he said. If you want to understand the real Declaration of Independence, don't even look at the preface. That's wild. What's the preface? Let me read it. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separation and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impelled them to the separation. And here's the icing. Here's the money. Here's the money shot. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. I've always had trouble with that word, so excuse me. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. But it's really those first few lines. We hold these truths to be self-evident. These are self-evident truths. There's no discussion. And we solidified them with the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. There's no discussion there. But the progressives come along, and everything that we've seen and everything that we're seeing, when we see Mamdani speak, when we see these new guys, El Said, when we see these guys say these things, this is the school of thought they're coming from. Hey, let's evolve. And it's really interesting because Wilson and his cohorts, I want to say Dewey, a couple others, they were big fans of a guy named Charles Darwin. So we go back to that Kantian view that what you see is the reality. And then you have these guys that are coming from this Darwinistic view of everything. Of course they're going to apply it to the government itself. Oh, we can evolve. Why do we call it a living constitution? We call it a living constitution because of these nitwits that were not willing to humble themselves and say, there is a greater good. There is a greater truth that maybe I don't completely comprehend. That maybe there's things God understands and will take care of if only mankind knows how to stay in their lane. So this is antiquated in their minds. And they make sure, the left, the progressives, have made absolutely sure for a couple hundred years now, or not a couple hundred years, for 120 or so, to feed into our animalistic natures towards things like nationalism. You think George W. Bush wasn't of this progressive school of thought? Think again. Everybody that we've had is at least somewhat prone to this idea of this living democracy. We had a snapshot of what could be, and of having some of this brought back with Kennedy. And what happened? Nixon understood some of these things. What happened? And the reality of the situation is that once these guys get what they want and they have that power, they're not going to give it up. They're going to push onward toward more centralized power. Over and over again, we see it over and over again. Again, the Founding Fathers understood that this was coming, that this would happen. The scary part is that they believed it would take uprising and violence to once again subdue it and get back to what they consider to be natural order. And so one of the things the Founding Fathers would say is that this Constitution and this Declaration of Independence were very mechanical. And they were going to rise above this machinery that had these very set rules that said you cannot step on a man's sovereignty. He is the king of his own castle. You will not take his goods. You will not step on his toes. And they turned it into something Darwinian. Hey, sorry, but the enlightened ones are here now, and again, there's people, even though they're doing better than they've ever done, even though the poor among us are now at least eating on a regular basis, they're still poorer than you. And so we're gonna have to, take what you got and hand it out. And so when Al Monday is like, hey, there's some bad things coming, there's going to be a lot of upheaval, and then says, but I'm very enlightened on this subject matter, and I know the fix. Especially if we're going to beat the CCP, who doesn't believe in natural rights, who doesn't believe in sovereignty, and who controls every aspect of their people's livelihoods, down to the amount of money that they make for whatever job they might have. We're going to fight that by doing exactly what they do. Doesn't make sense to me. Okay, but I have been called a moron. And maybe I don't get it. I definitely don't understand LLMs. I don't understand exactly what's going on. But I know that when somebody says redistribution of wealth can fix what's about to happen, then you better explain real clear what's about to happen. Or else you need to shut your mouth. But that's coming from, that's coming from one of the peasants. So, John Dewey. I was right. Knew it. John Dewey shows up, and he's a big time player in this whole progressive movement. And he says the idea that rights transcend time is antiquated. Again, in order for them to achieve this perfect version of humanity, in order to get to that point, you can't have natural rights. Come on. You don't, look, you might think that you know what's best for you, but we are a learned people. And we were born into wealth because of God's providence. God obviously wants us to teach you the reality of the situation. But this document gets in the way and says that we're not allowed to. So Dewey shows up. That document is antiquated. That's old school. Don't worry about it. You don't understand it. You never will, most likely. Yeah, hicks. And And back again, they stole the word liberal around this time. They understood that the people were very proud to be liberal. They understood the people were the entire Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, it was all built on actual true liberalism, which takes humility. And humility is, according to the Bible, a real virtue. Equality is not on there. But these guys, they're going to bring about the virtue of equality. Even though it's not a virtue, not really, not biblically, but they're going to redefine it because we are in a new age here in the 1890s or so. So, he argues that principles of the Declaration of Independence were insufficient to explain human rights. Those founding fathers, they went through a lot. They were good guys doing their best, but they didn't get it. Now, he gets it. He's learned. It blinded the eyes of liberals. Now, liberals back then mean constitutionalists. It blinded the eyes of liberals to the fact that their own special interpretations of liberty, individuality, and intelligence were themselves historically conditioned and were relevant only to their own time. And so this is the idea, this is a very postmodern idea that it's a structure. That reality itself, time itself, all of this, there's this tabula rasa, there's this blank slate, and all of our beliefs, no matter what they are, no matter who you are, if you go and you try to create a Declaration of Independence that says the things that this says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, you just built that yourself to make yourself feel better in the moment. You needed to get away from the King of England. You didn't like that 3% tax on tea. We get it. We're grateful. But it's still a construct. It's a social construct. Reality is what you make it in the moment in terms of institutions. Again, they have a very Kantian view, a very Darwinian view. And so there are better people, there are lesser people. The progressives, the ones that we now call liberal because they stole the word. But that's what they do. They steal. They're thieves in their hearts. Did they actually believe? I would go so far as to accuse them of doing the exact things that they're accusing the founding fathers of doing. They are the ones building social constructs. Looking at men and women and basing their opinion of them off of their religion, off of their race, off of their birth. What kind of a family were they born into? These aristocrats were the ones that wanted to look to the free man and say, you're not actually free. Somebody made that up on the spot. But the founding fathers, they knew. When they created what they created, they knew what they were doing. It is why our Constitution is dedicated to God. And maybe that comes down to a matter of opinion. My opinion is they were right. They had the right idea. And every time that you use your iPhone, every time that you get in your car, every time that you turn on running water, you have those two documents to thank. These guys didn't see it that way. We can do better. We can build back better. So they argued that this was a historical construct. They said the things they did, not because they were necessarily true, because all men are not created equal. Let's be honest. Look around. But because they just needed to get away from the king. That's what they thought was going on. Or at least that's what they argued. Again, I don't even think that they really believe this personally. I think that most people that like this tabula rasa view of reality, that everything is a social construct, are usually looking for a loophole, or looking for some way to implement their personal view. We see it with in evolutionary psychology, and maybe I sound like a bit of a hypocrite because I love evolutionary psychology. I do. I'll be the first to admit that it's not extremely scientific. It is not a hard science. And I don't mean hard as in difficult, but as in once you have a theory, you can say, well, this is the way it is, because it's not. And shoot, physics, how much of physics has been rewritten? Evolutionary psychology, it's unimaginable how much of it is incorrect. But it can explain behaviors that otherwise are hard to explain. And I enjoy it. I always have, I always will. But there's a point where believing that everything is the way it is, without humbling yourself and looking to God, no, it's dangerous. To say that the Constitution, that natural rights can evolve, that is dangerous. And we're watching in real time what these guys, how, these guys set the table for what we're dealing with. How many wars has the United States been in where you look back and you can't really explain why they happened? Not from your heart. How many lives have been lost? How many children have been murdered in their mother's wombs? Thanks to this Darwinian view that reality is, nature is what they say it is, and that humans are intellectually evolving, spiritually evolving. And now we have AI coming, and we're talking about putting chips in our brains, and it's just the next step of evolution. Here we go. We're going to be the X-Men, all of us. Well, if we're going to keep up with AI, if we're going to compete with AI, we have to blend. We have to become one with AI. And then once that happens, or say, the genetic editing, from the progressive view, you have a baby with perfect genes. Now, number one, that doesn't sound like the Nazis. Speaking of German philosophy, that doesn't sound like the Nazis at all, does it? These guys are going to say, well, that is the better person, maybe they should be making the decisions. There's a lot of different roads this can head down, and they're all dangerous, all of them. If we want peace, do we want nice things? Do we want cool things? Do we want to be in the future? Yeah, but that's what these guys wanted too. That's what they were saying. It's a new age. It's the age of Aquarius, man. That's what these guys were saying. And now we're 40 trillion in debt. No end in sight. Money means nothing. The value of the dollar has decreased 35% since 2010. This is the direction we are heading. You can call it utopian all you want. I choose not to. Because there's no end. There's no end. You give up this right, you give up that right, and there's no end. Look what's happened to Great Britain. They can't even say what they truly feel about anything online without fear. And what if AI, what if mythos, they call it mythos. It's myth. It's mystical. You know, what if mythos could tell us the truth? Which truth are we going to ask about? The Darwinian truth? I know things. I understand things that aren't worth my time or my effort. Why? Because I fear God. I believe in God. Was Darwin right about some things? Yeah, most likely, but maybe not certain. And we have no way of actually testing evolution itself. You look around and you say, well, this exists, so I bet it evolved from da 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 da, you know. But it doesn't happen in real time. You can't run a test. You can assume. And like I say, some truths are higher, are better than others. Is it true that people are born poor and born wealthy? Yes. Is it true that they are born equal? I say yes. The Kantians, the progressives, the ones we now call liberal Democrats, they say no. And that's dangerous. Are they right? If you define it by what you see in front of you, yeah, they're right. Someone was born wealthier, someone was born poorer. If you define it through the eyes of a believer, of someone who loves God, of someone who understands that the Bible is real, then the progressives are wrong. Those people are born equal. So someone asked me, I've had a couple people ask me recently, what, Dave, do you think it means to be an American? And this has been knocking around in my brain for a year now. And it was interesting that I had two separate people ask me, what do you think it means to be an American? And last night I was doing dishes and it kind of hit me. It's to be human. That's the beauty That's what the Founding Fathers did, is they said, you know what? We are going to dedicate this nation to God, to seeing humanity through a lens, a biblical lens. We believe that this book, the Bible, is right. That Christ did die for our sins. So I wrote this down when I got in here today. To be an American is understanding a very clear definition of humanity and having the humility to acknowledge we don't have a very clear definition of God. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like I'm talking past myself. How does God work? Can you explain it? I can't explain it. And when I read the Bible, it says, it's beyond your understanding, dude. Go to Job. Go look at Job, where God shows up to Job, not as fire in a bush like he did for Moses. He shows up as a tornado. And he calls Job something the equivalent of a maggot. He's tested Job over and over and over. He's taken everything, all of his wealth. And back then, wealth meant animals and children and a wife. You were wealthy based on how many kids you had, how many sheep you had. God took all of it, and Job kept the faith. And so God was like, well, I'll just go scare the shit out of the guy. Shows up as a tornado. Calls him a maggot. And he kept the faith. But God reminded him, he said, you don't understand why I did what I did. That's beyond your comprehension, dude. The Founding Fathers, they understood we're all Job. We're all doing the best we can. And that sometimes life is a gut punch. And that just the same way that your life isn't perfect, that person who was born into this ultra wealthy family, they got their own shit going on. Their life isn't perfect either. And so the Founding Fathers set up a constitution, and Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence with God in mind. And now we have people showing up saying, and it got really hardcore around the turn of the last century and has only become more of a steamroller. These guys that say, we know better. In fact, we're going to define God for you. Equality is nowhere in the Bible. But we've decided that it is a virtue, that it is something to strive for. And this AI is going to be the Industrial Revolution on steroids. And we're going to decide for you how you're going to live your life now that some of us have this new power. The Founding Fathers did not want to box the Almighty Creator in. You ever heard leave room for God? And that's another fear with AI is that at what point do we let's say that we use it responsibly to the best of our abilities, or we think we're using it responsibly. Folks, if I could tell you how many times I've turned to AI to try to help get through a decision-making thing, and then I ended up choosing the wrong thing. Maybe I should have just prayed. I didn't leave room for God. Wanted to know what AI had to say about it. Yeah. I'm going to read the rest of what I wrote. I don't remember what I wrote. I might hate it now that I read it. If I hate it, I'll tell you. There was an acknowledgement that there is good and evil. There is black and white, and we should always strive to do good. I know that with a lot of the esoteric memes, a lot of esoteric stuff, you see the checkerboard, the black and white. Which decision do you make? Or there's the dualism thing, the idea that without black there is no white, and good and evil. Sometimes someone has to do bad in order for good outcome. I don't know anything about that. I'm a dummy. But what I know is that a lot of reality, a lot of life ends up in the gray area. And with the black and white, the checkerboard thing, you zoom out enough and long enough, and when you see that bigger picture of all that black and white checkerboard, once those all become pixels, you're looking at gray. Founding fathers understood that. And that's why they wanted as limited a government as humanly possible. Because when you do that, you leave room for God. I wrote, they acknowledged that much of the world is gray, and that this is in fact a blessing from God as a reminder that He is at times the only one who knows what is true and what is acceptable. There's going to be moments in your life where you don't know what to do. And I'm not here to tell you that if you pray to God, He's going to give you the answer. But He loves us. He loves us. He loves us more than He loves the angels. He gave us free will. He didn't give the angels complete free will. I don't think. Scratch that. He may have given the angels free will. I need to look that up. But He gave us immense amounts of free will. And He loves us so much that He lets us screw up, sometimes royally. And I can attest to that. And He'll still show up for you if He knows that your heart is in the right place and that you want what's best, which is amazing. Sometimes He shows up for people whose hearts aren't in the right place. And He says, hey, I chose you, you maggot. Come on, get yourself together. Get your life straight. Carry your cross. Founding fathers understood that. So yeah, these guys, they all come out of Johns Hopkins, which we hold Johns Hopkins up on a pedestal. I think their medical school is supposed to be outstanding. That's fine. But it was a school built for German forms of study. And they loved the living Constitution. Woodrow Wilson said that the founders were like scientists. The Constitution was mechanistic, mechanical. It worked like a clock. He didn't like that. He showed up, and how much of that is pride? Wanting to show up and say, I can do better. That's pride, man. That's pride. You stick with that mechanical, that clockwork, and then you say, God, do your thing. I have faith that humans who are intrinsically good, who want to do good, and even when they do bad, the ones that are doing bad, somewhere in the back of their mind are telling themselves that they're doing good. Humans are incapable of doing things that they know are truly evil. But they will do things and justify it somehow, some way to themselves. Woodrow Wilson was one of these guys that what he did was wrong. What he and Dewey and the rest of the progressives believed was truly bad, was wrong. But they justified it to themselves. They said, is it right for us to show up and rewrite something that freed so many people from chains? This document that eventually freed the slaves? They showed up and they said, we know better. We understand that was just the beginning, and we are taking it to new heights. So he says the Constitution is mechanistic, treating human behavior as fixed. He didn't like the term checks and balances because they were Newtonian in nature. That's quoted. Woodrow Wilson saw checks and balances as Newtonian. These guys set up like a physics experiment when they created this Constitution. These separations of powers. You can't get anything done. There's veto players all over the place. And so if we want to do things, do cool things in government. Now notice Woodrow Wilson, notice Dewey, they didn't go out and start a business and start doing cool things there. They could have. They chose not to. They were above that. It's very aristocratic in nature again. So he didn't believe in permanent checks. He thought there were things that you should be able to usurp to get past. He said the trouble with the theory is that government is not a machine, but a living thing. It falls not under the theory of the universe, but under the theory of organic life. It is accountable to Darwin, not Newton. That is a direct quote. This is the guy that got all the leftist propaganda that we are fed today started with Woodrow Wilson. The dollar is worth what it is today thanks to Woodrow Wilson. And that's not conjecture. The Federal Reserve was formed in 1913, at the same time Woodrow Wilson was president. All of this stuff, the ball got rolling right around the 1910s. And then what do we see happen? Immediately we get world wars. Death, destruction. I said it, I don't think yesterday, but when I was reading The Imitation of Christ, I mentioned that I kind of wonder, and I'm not going to say that I know because I don't know, but you have to wonder. It's that tautological thing. It's that idea. Did the founding fathers choose God? Or did God choose the founding fathers? By the second winter, half of the pilgrims that came to the United States that were seminal in creating the nation that we now see, half of them were dead, including a lot of children. These men and women did what they did because they believed so strongly in God. They didn't come here for any other reason, but they wanted to practice their faith as devoutly as they could. I'm Catholic. I think that my faith is the correct way to worship God. But I don't know that God doesn't look at someone, at any Protestant, and say, that person is devout. I don't know God's heart. I never will. I know what Jesus said. At what point do we say, maybe God chose America to, why did we get the nuke before Russia? Is that providence? Is that God saying, hey, these guys still believe in me openly? Or these guys are willing to die to protect their brethren so that they can openly discuss my existence. I have faith that if AI shows up, which it has, if AI really does get implemented into everything, that as long as this nation can hold these truths to be self-evident, that as long as we can push onward with the Constitution as it stands, and especially if we can kind of correct what some of these progressives did, I truly believe God will have our back, especially versus any nation state that doesn't even allow their people to pray the way that they want to. I don't fear AI the way that most people do. Now, like I said, I'm gonna study up on it. I'm gonna try to come back. I don't want to be an idiot. I am, but I'm fighting it. I'm gonna read up, then I'll come back and share more of my thoughts. But as it stands at face value, I see it as AI is the natural next step in computing. And I believe wholeheartedly that if good people are stepping into dangerous waters, that as long as we can keep that faith, we'll be okay. Something will happen. God will either shut it down himself, or that we will be able to wield it responsibly. But I could be wrong. It has happened once or twice. We are evolved, as is our government. We no longer must fear our government, so growing the scope of government is no longer a threat. Wilson believed that. Wilson argued the power of the state trumps the power of the individual. Therein lies the rub. To me, that's blasphemy, right? In my mind, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, these are the closest things that we've gotten to holy documents since holy documents, maybe since the Imitation of Christ. Nowhere in my life have I ever seen any document that is or set of documents that are more beautiful in their frank honesty about what man is. as well as what he isn't. These guys, the progressives, the leftists, what we now call the Democrats, what we now call the liberals, they have no definition. Humanity will go on forever as something better and better and better and better. And, again, it's like talking to a child. Well, now I have flat screen TVs. We didn't used to have flat screen TVs. Humans are getting better at things. You try to explain, no, that's economics, competition. And as other nation states go through some rough times, they get bigger and they get stronger and they create more and they do it at a cheaper cost and they do it better because of free trade, because of free people making decisions on their own without government interference. See, I told you, people are getting better. People are getting, it's a new age. It's the age of Aquarius, man. I don't know. They saw Europe as very updated. Around this time, Europeans, they were going to outdo us in their philosophies. Why stop at natural rights? Let's keep going. What else? What other kind of rights can we pull out of thin air so that we can be different and better than the Americans? When in reality, you had the remnants of a feudal system where, again, these aristocrats wanted to maintain power, is really what it comes down to. How can we manipulate the incentive structures so that nobody can come out of nowhere? Here in America, we're all about the underdog. We live for the underdog. We love it when somebody comes out of nowhere. That's not universal. We want to say it's universal. It's not. And this is where even the right needs to be careful with hating on the immigrants. How many immigrants come here and they bust their asses because they see, oh my gosh, I've got opportunity. And the left, these progressives, they love it when you do that. They love it when you look at someone, you go, well, this person looks different than me. They have a different religion than me. I don't want them here. Based on these very, simple factors. You're feeding these progressives exactly what they want. But we also can't ignore the idea that progressives are going to want to bring in anyone and everyone that isn't willing to bust it and go out on their own and get on the government dole because they just got a voter. We have to be realistic about it. And it's not black and white. I wish it was. It'd be easier, wouldn't it? Everything would be. But it's not. There can be some black and white. You zoom out, you got gray. Zoom out long enough on a big enough checkerboard, you're looking at gray, as far as your human eyes are able to tell. I'm so optimistic. Computers have reached that point where they should be able to do the math and tell us what's up. I think the progressives are wrong. I think they've been wrong since day one. I think God has stepped in enough times and showed himself. And I'm hoping that the AI has picked up on that. I'm hoping that this mythos, all this stuff, is able to pick up on these little weird idiosyncrasies. Idiosyncrasies. Is that right? Idiot. The I'm an idiot. Idiosyncrasies? Is that right? Why does that sound wrong when I say it? I'm hoping AI has picked up on these little aspects of reality that don't make sense, that don't add up, and is able to say, hey, guys, God is working in your lives more than you realize. There's angels working on your behalf. This goes deeper than any of you are willing to acknowledge or at least open your eyes to at the moment. I'm hoping that's what AI would tell us. Because the other side of it is AI could say, well, when I look at this continent, I got some bad news about their development in terms of economics. I look at Africa and I see a continent that is pumping out some of the most devout Christian priests. You ever had a conversation with a Nigerian priest? I have. It's scary. You ever have a conversation with somebody who has seen some shit and still decided to give their everything over to God? They don't pull punches. They'll tell you about hell. They've seen hell. And they know that the real hell is worse than the shit they've seen. So a good AI is going to look at a continent and say, wow, these are amazing people. Or you could have AI look at a continent and say, gosh, even with all this foreign direct investment, their economic development is not so great. How are we going to judge humanity? How are we going to judge people? What kind of an AI are we going to build? Because it's going to tell us the truth. If it's done right, it'll tell us the truth. Which truth do we care about? Which truth do we focus on? I think it's important. I think it's extremely important. And it is scary. It's very scary. The idea that the Darwinians could be the ones running the AI show. You want the best and the brightest? Go to China. How do we know? Well, look at their scores. Look at their schools. Look at their AI. It's better. Well, then why do they have so many problems? Well, they kind of cut God out of their society. That might have something to do with it, you think? Why does the Constitution say pursuit of happiness? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say the pursuit of wealth. It doesn't say badass economic development. It doesn't say equality. What do we hold up on pedestals? What do we work toward? Which truths are better than others? I don't know. Guy named Frank Goodnow, actually the first president of the APSA, replaces Americans' theory of the Declaration of Independence and the way we perceive rights and applies Europe's ideas. So around this time, the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people's lives are being upended, and that's when you see a lot of these philosopher types show up and say, I know the way. He says the American conception of liberty. Within the American conception of liberty, sovereignty is antiquated. He says that Europe is updated. In a word, man is regarded now throughout Europe, contrary to the view expressed by Rousseau, as primarily a member of society and secondarily as an individual. The rights which he possesses are, it is believed, conferred upon him by his creator, but rather by the society to which he belongs. What these rights, are is to be determined by the legislative authority in view of the needs of that society. Social expediency, rather than the natural right, is thus to determine the sphere of individual freedom of action. Let me read that again. In a word, man is regarded now throughout Europe, contrary to the view expressed by Rousseau, as primarily a member of society and secondarily as an individual. That's communism. These guys are laying the foundation. This is what they have in China. Yeah, but they're so smart. Look at their scores. They speak multiple languages. And yet, some kid out of a public school in Iowa who plays Minecraft all day has this weird thing called opportunity here in America. Because we still somehow, in the face of all this progressivism, have held on to these natural rights. You want to talk about a gift from God. How we've done that these last 100 years, how we still have the Bill of Rights intact, it blows my mind. And I don't know that it's going to go on forever. Again, which AI are we going to get? Why is Matthew McConaughey suddenly saying, AI it's got a lot of potential, man. And, we could even end up with a good constitution. And I like McConaughey. I like most of what he said. I'm not disparaging Matthew McConaughey. But how long do we respect what we've got and recognize how special and important it is and how blessed we are to have it? The rights which man possesses are, it is believed, conferred upon him by his creator, but rather by the society to which he belongs. And maybe it was supposed to be not by his creator, and I think I missed a word. These are my notes. I can't even read my own handwriting, which can be problematic at times. But and that's another thing. How did I give up on cursive? You go look at the writing. I would love to see the actual original documents. I don't know if any of them are saved. I need to look that up of the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were written like on the fly. These guys were busy. they were they had a lot of things going on at that moment. They're trying to start a new country, a new nation, and they're writing this stuff out on the fly. And yet you go back and you read, and it's the most beautiful documentation, the most beautiful language you've ever seen. And I'd like to see their handwriting. I'm about to go down some rabbit hole stuff in the next couple days. I brought a book with me, which is, it's funny to go from this kind of stuff, but I'm going to be talking about Bill Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow. We're going to go into some of what's written in Behold a Pale Horse because it's very interesting juxtaposed to, this is out of the San Francisco Standard. I teach calculus at Berkeley. Some of my students can't do middle school math. And about a month ago on Drudge Report, he linked to a story where English professors at universities are getting students that are on a 10-year-old reading level, not 10th grade, 10-year-old reading level. And these are the people that these are our fellow Americans. I shouldn't say the people in such a derogatory term, but these are the Americans that we expect to be able to decipher their human rights, their natural God-given rights, and parcel that out from the notion that all of everything we have is a social construct, that we all start at a tabula rasa, a blank slate, that we're able to just create the reality we want. It's a trap. It's a trap. And Bill Cooper, I have no idea. I have no idea if any of the conspiracy stuff in this stuff is true, but I have a document in here. There's a document in Behold a Pale Horse that speaks directly to what we're reading. And so we're going to dive into that tomorrow. But first, let me finish this up, and then I'll wrap it up. But what these rights are is to be determined by the legislative authority in the view of the needs of the society. So society has to come first over in Europe. There are no individuals. There are groups. These are groups of people, not individuals. Social expediency, rather than the natural right, is thus to determine the sphere of individual freedom of action. Social expediency. We have to be able to make change and make it fast. But in my view, these guys were thumbing their nose at God. Excuse me. And what happened in Europe a few years later? And that, take that and contrast it with what Lincoln wrote. All honor to Jefferson, to the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by a single people, had the coolness, forecast, and capacity to introduce a merely revolutionary document, an abstract truth applicable to all men and at all times. It's universal. These natural rights are universal. What Lincoln did here is he kind of, to a degree, just restates what's in the preamble to the Constitution. The very thing Woodrow Wilson said that we need to ignore. The man that freed the slaves did so understanding what the preamble to the Constitution meant. And the progressives, the ones that now call themselves Democrats, it's exactly what they want us to ignore. And you go back to my question, at what point does income tax become slavery? What's the percentage? You tell me. Is it 100%? Does it have to be 100%? Is it 50%? Income tax did not exist before Woodrow Wilson. 1913, we get income tax, we get the Federal Reserve, and we get the 17th Amendment, the direct election of senators. You tell me that that's a coincidence. Suddenly, senators can go out to the people and say, hey, you, vote for me, and I'll give you that. They called it pork barreling. It didn't exist before 1913. Before the 17th Amendment, you got to know your local state representative. You knew their name. You went to them with your problems, with your desires. And we were a republic where that representative was someone of that you assumed was learned in these documents, these founding documents, in natural rights, and so that the whims and the passions of man would not overtake government. Because that's what happens whenever you start saying, well, this is what society needs. You're swinging over to your passions. And in the Federalist Papers, I want to say Madison, but I could be wrong. The papers were written by Madison, Hamilton, and Jay. But I think Madison makes the point that government is to be controlled by the people using reason. And then the government itself is to control the passions of the people. Again, I'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. We're going to do Behold a Pale Horse and go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, not too deep. I am not Alex Jones, but interesting stuff in there, especially juxtaposed to what is being talked about at these universities. And then I've got my own stories. Believe it or not, I actually taught for a couple semesters online university. Yeah, I know. But thank you for watching today. I appreciate it, and I will see you tomorrow. You guys have a blessed Tuesday, and rock on. Yeah. This is good. Talk to you soon.